Shalom, dear friends. We continue with the Likutey Moharan, second book, number 113. Torah from Rebbe Nachman of Breslev. Torah that's written for this generation, for the future generations, with Ruach HaKodesh, with divine inspiration to inspire and to give us hope, especially here in the times of Mashiach. Here by the western wall, the southern portion, quiet place to give a shir. So, where he begins, the holy Baal Shem Tov said, before a heavenly decree is passed against a person, the person himself whom the decree concerns is asked about it. So he's asked about what he did. This is a Gemara also. That's why it's familiar. So if he agrees to it, then the decree is passed, God forbid. That is to say, the person is asked about a situation comparable to his own, upon which he passes judgment, and then the decree is made against him. So, this is amazing Torah here. That basically, before a decree is passed against you for doing something wrong, you're going to be tested in the same situation before your judgment, and you're going to go and look at that other person, and are you going to judge him favorably? Are you going to give him the benefit of the doubt, or are you going to pass your own judgment right there? This is a beautiful lesson in Torah, in Avos Yisrael. Beautiful lesson. So before you go and look at someone, and it could be, maybe this will happen even before, Rebbe doesn't say this, but I'm saying this. Could be you're going to have a situation before you do that sin, where you're going to pass judgment. You're going to see someone doing something that he maybe shouldn't be doing, and you're going to think that person, Hashem is going to pay him back. He's such a rasha, he's such a sinner, but you're talking about yourself. So from now on, look with the eye of good upon everyone. I learned something a bit somewhat similar in the Gemara a few minutes ago here at the Kreisel. It's hard to find it on the spot. Let's see if I see something. A moment here. I was saying something similar in the Beis Hamikdash, where it had to do with a person's judgment. It's a beautiful Torah from Rabbi Nachman. The same thing, we have a similar situation where a person prays for another person. The Gemara says you're going to be answered first. We're all connected. We're all connected in so many ways, and it's so important to look with a good eye upon people and not to pass judgment. You don't know their situation. You're not in their shoes. And here you see that maybe one time you'll be in their shoes. And because you didn't look at them with something good, then you've just passed your judgment. So I was learning something on the Lashon Hara, but I didn't know I was speaking about this topic here to mark it off. So I don't know if I can find it. We'll take 1 second here. See if we can dig it up quickly. If not, we'll move on. We have some people coming here. So let's just continue. Maybe they'll come to me soon in the lesson. So let's continue. I need live. Ma? Yeah. This is the southern part and this is the western part. This is the southern part of the Kosel. And this is the western part. It's all one. Yeah, it goes all the way down. It's a little more holier as you're going this way because it's closer to the Kodesh Kodashim that way. Yeah. So let's continue. Okay, so it is similar to the episode involving King David. When the prophet Nachman told him the tale of the guest and the sheep, as it says in Shmuel, in accordance with King David's own judgment about the case, a judgment was passed against him just as he dictated. So he had a similar situation, and he passed his own judgment. Thus, whatever talk or stories a person may hear, he must be extremely careful not to finalize the judgment, as this is indeed a matter of life and death. Since seemingly mundane stories and conversations actually contain very lofty matters. When I was a bacher, I went to a sage and I told him I'm having so much difficulty with judging people favorably. He told me, he says, here's the secret what I do. Whenever I see something which may not be right in my eyes, I come up with a whole movie. Think of yourself like Hollywood or whatever, God forbid, but think of yourself as making it a whole sketch, and the whole reason make it a big thing, and find the innocence of the situation. I tell, it's brought in Gemara, like if you go and you see someone doing an Aveira, like say you see someone driving on Shabbos, because you drove on Shabbos before, you did something similar, where you turned on electricity, something, so you had to see it. If you didn't do this sin, you wouldn't see the sin in someone else. So we have to see that sin, because we're still passing judgment on ourselves. We have to go and look for the eye into why is the person driving? Maybe he's going to the hospital. You have to make up a sketch and visualize this sketch. You cannot look. You have to always look with a good eye. There's so many people coming out saying negative things about different people, and you think that this is MS, and this is a way of Torah, and you have rabbis speaking against other rabbis, and other people get involved and they start bashing a person, destroy them to pieces because they make mistakes. This is not a derech of Chassidus. The derech of Chassidus is that you teach your eyes to only see good, to looking good in people. You can't fathom bad, because you're so pure. You're trying to purify yourself. You're purifying your eyes, your mind. If you're thinking about bad things that other people are doing, then you are connecting to that bad in some way. No, there are certain people who can correct somebody. They might be in a position to do that. They have to do it tactfully. Gemara says you're not even supposed to correct a person for their evil if you know they're not going to listen to them. They're not going to listen to you. So there's ways to do things and never to destroy people. Lashon Hara is a grave, grave thing. Not to speak Lashon Hara. And so many lives have been destroyed. You destroy a parent's life, you're destroying their family's life, their children. You speak against the parents, you're speaking against their children. And the children are going to suffer. Whether it's in school or when they get older, it hurts them. I grew up with so much Lashon Hara against my family because we didn't have a lot of money. We lived out in the country, religious family, because there were reasons for these things, but people passed judgment, and it affected me as a child. I was a child, 6 years old, 7 years old, hearing bad things about my parents that someone overheard. Terrible Lashon Hara I grew up with. I saw it destroy, make my father pace back and forth throughout the night, for so much suffering because of Lashon Hara. And what did I do? So when you go and you bash that father and that mother to somebody else, you're destroying their family, you're destroying the children. So think about it that way. So stay out of machloka, stay out of being negative. All negativity that comes out of your mouth is bad. You have no reason to speak negative. If a rabbi wants to go and handle his business and he thinks he should go and talk against another rabbi, stay out of it. It's not your problem. Don't get involved, because it's not good. It's not good for anybody to do it. And that rabbi should really think twice before he does it and know what he's doing. So keep the mouth, keep the mind pure, the ears, watch what you're listening. Even if you are not the one speaking Lashon Hara, if you're listening to someone speaking Lashon Hara, then you're just as bad. And it says in the Talmud that you have to go and ask tshuva. If you even heard it, if you're not even the one speaking Lashon Hara, you have to go to that person and ask tshuva, because you listened to it. So don't listen to bad things. Take that negativity and throw it away. If your rabbi is speaking negative about people, toss them out. Find one that's speaking positivity, that's going to give hope and joy. I can't explain to you how important it is to cling to positivity. There's so much negativity. We don't need it in our Judaism, in our kiruv. We need positivity and hope and joy. God made Ashkenazim, He made Sephardim, He made Datim, He made all groups of people He made conservative, even though if you don't like it and we don't agree with it from my standpoint, but he still made them. Every person, there's good, there's hope, there's sparks of light, positivity, okay? There's hopes that people will change, that people will see more truth. But get rid of the negativity. You don't need it. It's not going to bring you close to God. Second here. Right, so the Gemara, I was trying to remember the Gemara from before, is saying that the Lashon Hara is not as bad until a point where it actually affects that person's life. If you're speaking bad about the person in Lashon Hara, it's still bad, it's still sinful, but it's much, much worse when it in some way changes that person's life in some way. Then it becomes a whole nother level of evil, and decrees are passed against you for having spoken Lashon Hara, and there was not a carbon that was given for Lashon Hara. We didn't have a carbon. We had to do tshuva for something like this in a different way. It's a grave thing to be speaking against people. Does not help your life. Continue number 114. The idea discussed in this lesson was already taught above in lesson 88. See what's written there. In this lesson, however, an additional point is made. There may also be a wicked person who opposes a sage, a tzaddik. And all this is also independently arranged on high in order that the tzaddik, the sage, should be able to draw shefam, blessing, into the world. The wicked person may wish to kill the tzaddik even. He may wish to kill the sage. He hates him completely. But God will not let this tzaddik fall into his hands. So it could be that this evil person will speak against the tzaddik, and his whole idea is, I have to go and bash this sage, and because of that, it enables the sage to go and bring blessing to the world. So sometimes there needs to be this opposite realm. That's if you're not searching after truth, then there's you want here with the koiso, everything is truth emes here. So, but if you're not searching after that truthfulness, you may not see the evil that evil wants to bring down and block a person from reaching the ultimate emes and truth. So a sage has to go for a lot of tikkunim. Like I said, my father was a Talmud Chacham, was a very wise man in Torah. So he had to go through this Lashon Hara to bring him closer to God, so he could bring blessing down to the world. So sometimes Hashem brings this upon the sage, so in order that he can go and bring blessing, and can reach a higher level to grab that blessing. 115. When a person who has pursued the physical all his life subsequently becomes inspired and wishes to walk in God's ways, God's attribute of judgment then denounces this person and does not allow him to come close to God. Ooh. It also arranges obstacles for him. Now, a fool, when he sees these obstacles, simply retreats. A person of understanding, however, draws himself closer to God precisely then. For he looks and finds the Creator within the obstacle itself, since in truth, God himself is hidden within the obstacles themselves. So a person wants to do tshuva to Hashem, but he feels a little bit of light. Maybe I should keep a Shabbos this week. And then immediately it's finished. Because that's not enough. It can't be just enough in the thought that he wants to do tshuva one time in the thought. No, he has to go, and it's a big obstacle to come from a place where he's not observing Shabbos and then come over to the other side of Shabbos where all this light. So it's not something so simple. That's why we have to judge people favorably. It takes a lot. A person isn't educated. He didn't grow up like this. So he has a big obstacle. But this wise person who now wants to do tshuva, that wants to come closer to God, is going to see the obstacles in front of him to make this transformation. He's going to say, look, I see this as an obstacle, and I'm going to go over that obstacle. I'm going to go through that obstacle. So because absolute truth has tremendous amounts of obstacles around it, especially today. We see it, that wherever there's truth, there's there's tremendous amounts of falsehood trying to go and attack. So a person who seeks truth, he has to be a person of understanding that he sees that these difficulties are there to help strengthen him, so he's able to go and overcome the falsehood completely. Number 116, a person who gives charity is saved from sinning. It speaks for itself. Very important. Anoisin tzedakah nitzol mi'averos. Give a lot of tzedakah. It's brought in the Chazal that it's more difficult to give tzedakah many times than to give it once. Once you give a person, even though it's a lot more money once, but you're only breaking the Yitzhar one time. But to give small amounts to many times to a lot of different people, or to the same person many, many different days and times, it's much more difficult. So giving charity is going to save you from the Yitzhar. It's going to push away the Yitzhar, because it's something complete. You give charity, you're taking a lot. You're taking from the physical, from the spiritual, from all your body, from all your well-being and your maintenance. You're giving that to somebody else. This is a great, great mitzvah, and it's going to protect you from averos. Number 117. On Saturday night, after the conclusion of the Shabbat, this revelation of the prophet Eliyahu begins, and this in turn pushes away falsehood, which is identified with the primordial snake that brought death into the world. Right, we speak of the snake, the Nachash, with Adam and Eve in the Eitz Hadas, the tree of knowledge. So this revelation of the conclusion of Shabbos is pushing away this falsehood that was brought by the Nachash. This is the reason why it is difficult to fall asleep on this night. It's very difficult to fall asleep Motzei Shabbos. Why? We see here. Because there's this attack, we're separating from the holy to mundane, and there's this attack we feel coming at us. So it's very hard to have das and understanding that night. So people are awake, they're tossing and turning, people second Shabbos is over, people jumping into their cars, they want to do things, they want to get things done. The second, Shabbos was so bad, you have to end it. We're supposed to have Malka, we're supposed to rejoice like David Melech Chai, but we're running around Motzei Shabbos because that Hamal ben Kodesh Chol, that Chol is coming at us, and we're embracing it too quickly. We need to calm ourselves down and relax away Motzei Shabbos. But this is why we have this difficulty sleeping. Rebbe Nachman says, only one I ever seen say this, and it's a true concept. You see it. People waking up late Sunday morning. Okay, so since the concept of sleep is also one of falsehood, death and the snake, it's related. So, the Gemara says that sleep is 1/60th of death. So you're attaching yourself, even if you don't want it, tiny bit. That's why we have to say Shema, Kriya Shema before we go to sleep, to protect ourselves, to show Hashem we have faith, and then it protects us, have a negel vasa by our sides, to wash our hands in the morning, to get rid of the evil, and then you sleep better. So a further explanation is that the Havdalah ceremony at the conclusion of Shabbos is identified with the concept of understanding of das. If there is no understanding, how will there be Havdalah? Distinction. So this idea of Havdalah is the idea of das, of understanding. It says in Yerushalmi, Brachos. Right? It's probably why we also put it in the Chonein Hadas, it's prayer in the Amidah, Motzei Shabbos. This is the idea of das. You have to have das to separate between good and bad. Right? Shabbos is so holy. With the extra neshama to protect us, to give us that ruchnius that we need, we can't get during the week. And then suddenly we have the chol, the weekday. It's like boom! It's a shock to the system. So it's literally a shock to the system. So therefore, it's difficult to fall asleep. Then, because sleep involves the departure of one's understanding. Right, you're trying to cling onto the idea of das, and then sleeping is getting rid of das, right? Because you just want to stop thinking to sleep. So you're trying to to understand your soul, your life. Motzi Shabbos, everything feels in the air. You want Shabbos back. At the same time, I want to get stuff done. So try to ease into the weekday. Don't immediately. There's actually halachas. You're not supposed to really do work Motzi Shabbos until you do Havdalah, and even then, until Chatzos at midnight, there's still this the extra soul hanging around. But when you jump into the mundane, you're taking that holy soul and putting it into the mundane. When you do a Malav Malka, the holy suit of Malav Malka, which strengthens the loose bone, which we're going to be reincarnated from, the bone in the back. That is, if you take a hammer, you can't break it. That's how we're going to be reincarnated from that bone, and then the rest of our body. So this is strengthened through the Malav Malka. But Malav Malka is telling the Queen of Shabbos, you know what? I enjoyed you. You were so precious to me. And if you go and just like we bring in the Shabbos with L'chal Doidi, L'kras Kala, we sing, we rejoice, we're so happy. We put on the special clothing. So Motzi Shabbos, at the end of Shabbos, in the same way, your queen comes to your house. You're gonna go and just walk her to your front door and say, "Okay, have a nice life." No, you're gonna walk her out. You're gonna make it nice. I really appreciate you coming. This is what Malka is. I have the schus of being in here in Jerusalem. A lot of times, Malka, I take my son. We go to King David, and when there's music there and there's celebration, we go buy some food. We have Malka on top of the roof. I can't show it to you live because it's Shabbos around the world. I don't want it to cause people to watch. So, not only should we welcome the Shabbos, we need to let the queen go in the same light and attitude, and not in a rush. It hurts me, with kids. Kids want to get going with their week. They want to listen to music right away. The second that Shabbos is over, to the minute, to the second, boom, Shabbos. Let's go and do things. And I can't blame them because it's hard. We're already, my family's tradition is to hold Rebbeinu Tam, which is a much later Shabbos than the stars. We go a little longer, so it's a little harder. So I figure, what, they're doing that. Can't ask for more, but you feel it's such a bang. That's just from the kedusha, and that's not what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be something that's drawn out. And there's many holy Rebbetzins that they wouldn't work Motzi Shabbos. Right after Shabbos, they wouldn't go and run to clean the house. They would wait. They'd wait a little bit. Didn't rush to do it. Same time, if your wife needs help, pick up the broom and do what needs to get done. You got to be there, make peace. Peace is always first. Right? It says in the Gemara that for peace, even the name of God was erased. And there's a story of this, that making peace between husband and wife is that important. So if you need to help, then go ahead and help. But see if you could push it off to after Malav Malka, because Malav Malka and the ushering off of the Queen of Shabbos is very, very important. And Rabbi Nachman says that a person who brings in Shabbos early, he's bringing the light of Shabbos into the weekdays from before Shabbos. He's bringing it into Thursday and Wednesday. And by ending Shabbos later, then you're taking the Shabbos and you're bringing its light into Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Now, how does that affect you? Well, come Monday, when you have to go back to work, and instead of your boss going and ripping your head off, he's going to be all sweet to you, because you've brought the light of Shabbos into Monday, into your life. So that's one reason why you shouldn't end Shabbos so quickly. It's heard from Rabbi Nachman. I think the Zohar also speaks about this. So don't be in a rush to end the Shabbos, to end that light and the holiness. The study of Torah on the Shabbos is worth hours and hours and hours of weekday study. It's so much holier. You accomplish so much more. You have so much more understanding and das from Shabbos. So embrace the Shabbos with learning, with oneg Shabbos, with eating good meals. Put some effort into the preparation of Shabbos, and don't let it go so fast. Number 118, Neforesh Halimud, on explaining what one studies. When a person studies something in Torah, it is good for him to explain what he studies in a language that he understands. And this practice is beneficial to the world. Now, I love this teaching because I don't know why people do this to yeshiva, bachrim, and students. I tell them, you're now in yeshiva, take your English books and throw them away. Take all the English, take the art scrolls, take the translations of English, toss them. You don't need them anymore. You have to go and fix your Hebrew and break your teeth, and then you can become a scholar. And so the student, he struggles and struggles. I know people that have been in yeshivas for 40 years. 40 years. And they'll come to me and tell me they still don't understand Hebrew enough. If you didn't grow up in Israel, learning from a child, the Gemaras and the Mishnahs and the Chumash, it's very, very hard to have perfect Hebrew. And to go and tell the students to throw it away and break their teeth, and then they're not enjoying the Torah study. Here they have 1 or 2 years before they go to college or get a job, and you tell them to break their teeth, and therefore all the love and enjoyment is gone out also with them throwing the books. So don't be so fast to go and tell a person just break your teeth. Yes, some of the zman of your study, you should break your teeth and work hard, and also learn your language. So here we see a Torah from Rebbe Nachman similar to this. And not only that, the Rosh Hashivas, they're telling people it's forbidden for you to do such a thing. They're saying you no more. I'm really not for this, especially in our generation. People really struggle with their Hebrew of dikduk, and they need to work on it. But it came to such an extent, like when I was a bacher, and my Hebrew wasn't good, and I broke my teeth on it. 7, 8 years old, 9 years old, 10 years old, I had tutors, and I'm not great in my Hebrew. Am I embarrassed to say that? Maybe a little bit, but I'm here to help. My Hebrew is not great. It's not great, and I had tutors, and I worked my head off. Believe me, I worked it from a young child. And I told you, I have a guy 40 years in yeshivas, and he can learn a Gemara and Rashi and Tosfos, but he'll still ask me if I'm learning with him and I have my art scroll open, can you double check what that means? And he doesn't feel 100% comfortable because he didn't have it when he was 5 years old, 6 years old, and even I, who had it 5, 6 years old, I didn't grow up in Israel. Some people, languages are difficult. So therefore, Rabbi Nachman is saying, when you learn something in Hebrew, if you learn something in Aramaic, that you same time should go and translate for yourself into a language you understand. It was an Israeli I was learning with, Chavrusa, and he purposely did the opposite. He purposely went and he took a translation in English, which he wasn't 100% on, to learn it on purpose because he figured he's going to learn it differently than in his own language and pick up some things he may have missed. So it's good both. It's good both. The Hebrew, do the English, be comfortable, be happy with your studies. Don't let someone take the happiness out of the study. And that's what Chassidus is about. Chassidus is bringing in that happiness and that enjoyment into the service of God. That's the Torah of Rabbi Nachman. That's my Torah to you. Is to bring back the enjoyment, the coldness, the closing up of the person. This has become the norm. The hanhagos, the stringencies. There's enough halachos that are not being followed in Mishnah Berurah. We don't need all these stringencies. We just need to serve God with simplicity, with happiness. And this is how you have to bring light. This is how you do kiruv. This is how you teach Torah. You don't go and make things difficult for people. It's already difficult enough. Continue inside. The greatest sage of each generation is the aspect of Moshe, of Mashiach. Now, when this sage, Tzaddik, originates new Torah ideas, this is conceptually the Spirit of God. That is the Spirit of Mashiach, hovering over the face of the waters. The water being the Torah, as Zohar says, right? Water is compared to Chachma, wisdom, wisdom is Torah. So water and Torah. This idea that the Torah, when a tzaddik originates new chidushim in Torah, new thoughts in Torah, so this is an aspect of bringing Mashiach out. We spoke about it the other day, how scholars are important for him to write down his thoughts in Torah, new thoughts, but thoughts that are based on his understanding, based on Torah. He can't go in and take it outside into his own mishigas. It has to be something that has basis in the foundational Torah, and that is bringing light. Each scholar, I recommend people should write more books, not just myself. We should write books about your Torah ideas that come to you, but only if you're not going to take even 1 ounce away from the emes of Torah to do your own thing. Everything must have a source. You have to quote your sources. And just as Mashiach suffers sickness for the entire Jewish people in order to atone for them, the greatest tzaddik of each generation also suffers affliction for the Jewish people in order to make it easier for them. The sages. This is why it's so important to support Talmidei Chachamim, support people, real sages, people who are really learning Torah. It's so important because they're suffering for the entire generation. I've yet to see a Talmid Chacham, a sage, a real person who learns the Shema, who didn't suffer, whether it was physical ailments, financial, in their home with the Shalom Bayis, true suffering. And you release them suffering. You share in their Torah when you give them money to support them. It doesn't have to be a lot, a little bit. So these sages are suffering for the Jewish people, so it's easier for them. You cannot. We're in a very difficult generation where we see so much going on, so many difficulties. You cannot imagine the level of those difficulties should the sages not be taking some of that on their shoulders. We lost many sages this year with the virus, and they cannot be brought back. And they weren't given the hespedim at the avayas as they should. They weren't, because so many people were dying from this or that. We lost so much. And when they leave this world, some of the tzaddikim may have seen that if they leave this world, they could relieve the suffering of the Jewish people, and they might have even told God, okay, take me if it will relieve the suffering. Sages are suffering for all of us. Give them the kavod that they deserve. Furthermore, the fact that we are unable to comprehend the original Torah teachings of the sage the way they are, meaning the way they left the mouth of the sage in the exalted heights, and said they must be explained to us in a lower form in Yiddish or something similar, or non-sacred tongue, which people are accustomed to speaking. This too is an aspect of he was stricken mechulal because of our transgressions. It says in Isaiah. In other words, he is made non-sacred, chol, because of us, as it says in the Zohar. And for the sage, this too is considered suffering to atone for the Jewish people. So the fact that a sage, what makes a Rebbe? What makes a great sage? A great sage is someone who can take very high Torah and bring it down to the regular person, to the simple Jew to understand. This is what makes a great sage. He can take something complicated and make it easy for people. This is what Hasidus does. It takes ideas in Kabbalah and mixes this light into regular life. So the greater the sage, the greater his ability to bring things down for every person to understand easily. But this is still a suffering, it's saying. Rebbe Nachman saying this still causes some form of suffering to the sage, that he has to go and take something so high and bring it lower for you. So this is his way of suffering in some way, that he has to go and bring it into a language that you understand, when for him it's up here. But at the same time, that shows his greatness. So a sage who can take that high stuff and bring it down is not really as high as someone who can. That was what was great about Rebbe Nachman. When Rebbe Nachman was alive, he had so many sages against him and so many obstacles, because Rabbi Taub Zeicher Sadik Livrach of Baltimore, I was at a meal with him, very holy sage, a private meal. And he told me he says, it's not that all the sages were against Rabbi Nachman. It's that they couldn't understand him. He was so high in Torah. And he was able to go and it was like an angel to them. It didn't make any sense to him. But that was so great about Rabbi Nachman is he took these high things. Even though he was like a malach, he understood the simpleness of a person's, like he says, the whole world is a narrow bridge. The main thing is not to fall off. He says that the biggest mitzvah is joy. So Rabbi Nachman took those high Torah and he understood the regular person. And that generation that he was in, he only had 100 followers, 150 followers back in the day. And he said, my Torah is going to be for future generations. I'm writing it for the future generations. So he wrote the Torahs in a way where it wasn't even for his generation, it was for us in these generations, right in the times of Mashiach, where he was able to lift us up. So maybe they didn't understand him in those generations, but more and more people are starting to understand him in these generations. And he's becoming, what kind of sage becomes more popular after his death than his life? I mean, he become more known, but to have more chassidim and to grow and grow and grow. This is the greatness, this shows the greatness of this tzaddik, that he took high Torahs and brought it low. And that's the real skillfulness of a scholar. It's not to bash people and make them feel low and down about themselves and tell them how sinful they are. You have to repent because you're a sinner. No, it's to lift people up, not to lift people down. Continue. Lesson 119. On Shabbos, every person is imbued with holy knowledge. Through this, the attribute of compassion rises up within him, and in turn causes him to act compassionately towards others. Since compassion is dependent on knowledge, then when he has compassion, heaven has compassion on him. So through this Shabbos observance, a person is able to be more compassionate because he's gaining in knowledge on Shabbos. And when you are compassionate, then God is compassionate to you. Remember that. People think they're going to take out money from their wallet and give it to the poor person, that they're taking so much from themselves. But no, you are giving, and Hashem is going to give back to you with the same compassion. It's not, it's maybe the brain can't understand this, but if you give $100 out of your wallet, okay, you're 100% giving the $100 back from God, because that's His promise to you. You're compassionate, I will be compassionate. So you're not giving anything from yourself. You're not taking away anything from your life. You're only opening up the doors from God to give you what He wants to give you. For those just tuning in, we're here at the Western Wall, southern portion, teaching Torah from Rebbe Nachman. Lesson 120. When a person studies something in a book, it does not have the same power to inspire him as when he hears it from the mouth of the sage himself. This reality is recognized explicitly in the Torah as well. And this is a very important concept. In today's generation, so many people are returning to God through technology. There are many people wishing to convert to Judaism, and they're already keeping Shabbos, they're already keeping kosher, they're keeping mitzvos, and they've never in person met a sage. They've never met a rav, a rabbi, and they're leading a life, they're trying to lead a life of Torah. And it's an amazing concept. And I sometimes, when they say certain things to me, and they believe in this online rabbi with all their heart and all their soul, and I wish I could go and say to them, but I don't have the heart to say it. You know, that you're following someone online, you've never met them. Are they your rabbi or not? I don't know. For me, I try my best to care about everyone that comes to my shirim, that speaks to me, and to remember them, to pray for them. I'm here praying every day for everybody I can, and my heart is open. I can't say that for everybody else. Some people, you may just be a number to them. You need to have a rabbi in person in your life to inspire you. You need to be around Jews. Whether if you're returning to Judaism, you have to move to communities where you can be touched in person. So Rabbi Nachman is saying you cannot beat the Torah that you are reading from a book to hearing it in person. You cannot beat this. You can't compare such a thing. We're reading Torahs from Rabbi Nachman, but Rabbi Nachman, the students that were there at Rabbi Nachman's table when he was giving these lessons, it was a whole other world. They spoke about it. There's a book for Fire and Water. They spoke about how they used to see spiritually. It felt like there were flames coming out of the rabbi's mouth when he was speaking Torah. It was alive to them. There were moments where they were shaking. The Torah felt so unbelievable. And so sitting at Rabbi Nachman's table, reading these same Torah, they were shaking. It was so beautiful to them. It was so real to them. And here you're hearing it. Maybe now, soon most of you will hear it as a recording. Every time it steps down from being in person, it's lower and lower. So you cannot beat the idea of being there directly at the footsteps of the sages. It says in Pirkei Avos that you should have your doors open to the sages, and you should sit at their feet, and you should dwell with them, and be close to them. So we do the best we can. Some people's situations, require them to wait a little longer, but you cannot compare having a personal relationship in person with a sage. You need that. You have to have that. You have to have that, and make every effort to be as close as you can in whatever way possible. Even the Talmud says if you learn Talmud alone and you teach it to yourself, there's a very good chance that you're going to learn foolishness. That you cannot compare learning it with a chavrusa, with a partner. So very important when you speak about how great these sages are, who you've never met, because you hear some Torahs, but you don't really know their personal life. You don't know if they're living the Torah as much as they're speaking it. You got to have that true experience. Only when you can see that rabbi in person and make that personal connection will you truly be able to say that this is my sage, this is my teacher. And, it wasn't easy for me personally, even though I grew up religious, to find those perfect teachers for me. I remember sitting in my room, 19 years old, and crying to God and saying, look, I'm religious, but I don't have a rabbi that I connect to. I don't have, my father's Chabad, I accept it. Some of the Chabad I can connect to, but it's not enough for me. I don't really want this. It's not my path. What is my path, God? Where do I go? Where is the sage? Where is this light? I read about these sages, but where is mine? Where is mine that can understand me? And then, it took years of prayer and crying out. Rabbi Nachman speaks about this in other lessons. You have to cry out to meet that sage who understands your soul roots and can bring you close to God. And then I met the Nicholsburg Rebbe. It was my first real experience where I connected to a tzaddik on another level. And we speak often. I'm blessed to have that relationship where he calls me also. So it's life-changing. And the simple things he said to me from that first meeting, it opened up all the Torah for me. The few things he just corrected, the most minor things, and that was enough. But you have to pray very hard to meet these sages. And each step of your life, sometimes you'll need a next sage. You're going to have to pray even harder to find that sage that's connected to truth, absolute truthfulness. And you're going to see that in your life. As you grow, you think that this rabbi will be a rabbi forever, but you'll see in many cases that he was just a stepping stone. And there's much higher rabbis out there who are much more closer to truth, who are much more Talmid Chachamim and sages. And you have to pray for that. Even at my level now, I have to pray in my situation, even if I'm at the koisa, at the pure MS is right here, I still have to pray for a higher level of MS, because there's levels and levels and levels of truthfulness, to be closer to the sages, to not be here myself. Continue, 121. Whenever a person is reading or studying in any book, he should always find himself. In other words, he should glean moral instruction for himself, and he should see his own smallness and lowliness. When a person does this, it is a sign that he desires to do God's will. So when you study the Torah, that's the problem with in yeshiva. Sometimes the Torah is so cold. You're not taught to take it inside, and that was the old movements of Musar in the old days in Europe. When they learned Musar every day, there was a Musar Zman, and it lasted. Today's Musar Zman is the shortest Zman of the whole study in yeshiva, but it should be the longest Zman. That was the old thought process. I'm going to learn Musar. I'm going to go and learn character correction, and Chassidus is really like a Musar. It's a Musar with a little more joy. But both, learning the old Musar Svarim, learning the Chassidus, this is going to help character correction. When you go and you look and see yourself in the lesson, make it alive for you in your life, in your situation. My wife and I were having a discussion about whiskey and scotch. I got in a big argument a few days ago about it. And if you know me well, you should know I like to let my wife win. Why? Rebbe Moshe Meir Weiss once said, he said, do you want to be married to a winner or a loser? Maybe this was our Victor Miller, but the same thing. It's the same line of Torah. So he says, do you want to be married to a winner or a loser? I want to be married to a winner. So let them win. Let your spouse win. Let them be happy. Why do you have to win the argument for? What's the purpose? Anyway, we're talking about this, and she says, this is made of, it's made of barley. The scotch and the whiskey's made of rye. And so what happens? Second she leaves the door, I'm learning my Gemara. Second she leaves the room, the Gemara speaks about the carbonos with barley. So here it is, when you reach a certain level where you're inside the Torah throughout the day, where Torah is your main occupation. That's what it says, make the Torah your main occupation, and work should be secondary. That doesn't mean you don't work and support your family. Just that the Torah is first in your mind. That is your purpose of life, is the study of Torah. 1 second. So when you do this, the Torah is going to be open for you. Meaning you're going to see yourself in the Torah. And I see so many people who are Tamil Chacham, difficulties in their life. Sometimes they have to leave the kollel and stop. And I said, are you learning a blot of Gemara a day? You're struggling with so much difficulty in your life. You're a Talmid Chacham, but you're not getting that blot of Gemara done. If you get that blot of Gemara done every day, and I recommend many blots of Gemara, you're going to start to see your life in that Gemara. And instead of struggling, and this is in my book, The Path to Finishing the Talmud, instead of struggling in life with so many different tests that you are having difficulties with, that you have to overcome in the physical realm, whether it's dealing with bills, dealing with people, and dealing with family problems, you're going to find those difficulties instead in your study, and you're going to fight them in knowledge. There's an old Chinese lore of karate that the real fighters, they fought in the mind. They fought in the mind. They didn't have to actually physically fight. The real fight is in the mind. So they show, like their fighters, how they would pretend fight. It wasn't that they actually needed to hit anyone, right? The sword fighting is more for pretend, for learning, because it's really in the mind whether you're going to be the winner or not, because a lot of it's based on focus. Okay? So the same way, the battles will be through the Torah, through the mindset of overcoming that confusion inside yourself, more than the actual battles outside. Once you make Torah first, you have the battles in the mind, in the study, between the machlokas, between Abaye and Rava, and Shammai and Hillel. This is the machlokas instead of it being in your own life. And you'll see that your own life will calm down. It won't be so confusing anymore. But you have to go and put the Torah first for that to happen. And that's what I see in my life when I weigh the Torah first. Then all the confusions are secondary as well. So this is why it's so very important to find yourself in the Torah study. Make the Torah study real. Don't make it cold. Don't make it feel like it's robotic. And then it's going to be a great light for you. Shalom, shalom, the Western Wall. And please share the video, and thank you for joining me.